Rice plantations became very popular once rice was introduced in 1680. Rice became the most important crop for export because the main place they exported to was Barbados, and because the colonies provided them with rice and other goods/crops, they gave them slaves. Without the slaves, the plantations would not flourish and the economy would not be the same for the whites on the rice plantations. The whites in the southern colonies were all towards the top of the social structure, and their social class depended on your family status and your ownership of land. The highest social class was the plantation owners, who were all white. They were the ones who owned the rice plantations and were in charge of all the slaves on their plantation. Below them is the small farmers. They had very little amount of slaves, but were still towards the top of the social classes. The next class was the landless whites. It was very hard for them to find good, long-lasting jobs because the slaves had most of them. This caused them to need a wide range of marketable skills. Most of the landless whites were previously indentured servants. Under the landless whites was the indentured servants, who worked for a plantation owner for 4 to 7 years to get a free passage from England, food, clothing, and shelter, all in the New World. Under them at the bottom was the slaves, who were brought to the New World because of their experience with rice cultivation. They made up a big majority of the population. In society, each person had their own role to pull everything together. The white woman's job was to take care of the children and the house. They married young, and women were outnumbered by men 6 to 1, so any eligible woman did not stay single for long. White men on rice plantations were either a plantation owner, small farmer, or possibly a merchant, lawyer, doctor, or other possible small jobs. Both men and women married young because disease was a major problem in the colonies. Common diseases were malaria, dysentery, and typhoid. Many people did not even last till the age of 20, so families were fragile and most marriages ended because of a death. All whites were either Anglican or Baptist. The Anglican Church was the original Church of England. The Baptist Church was made up of mostly poor whites and slaves, and the Anglican Church was made up of the higher classes. Education for the whites living in an area with rice plantations was important. The upper-class boys were tutored and then sent off to college or university. Many of them went to English universities. The middle class were the children of doctors, lawyers, merchants, ministers, and many more. They attended elementary and grammar schools, and some continued on to college. The lower class would mainly do apprenticeship. This was when a new generation would learn trade or profession with on-the-job training and some classwork and reading. Females also had no education but were taught how to maintain a household, take care of children, and how to be obedient to men. Wealthier girls were able to afford a private tutor for reading and writing. The white owners of the rice plantations lived in big plantation homes, or also known as mansions. Because they had lots of money, they were able to afford a big house and things that were not common unless you were wealthy. Some of these things that they might have had were glass windows, multiple fireplaces, and more rooms than they needed. Almost all the other whites lived in smaller homes in the city. They had wood, flooring, and paneling on the wall. Their houses were usually one room, and they had just the basics for furniture. The whites who were wealthier were able to afford better food. One thing that only most of the wealthy had was all different kinds of meat that were considered more rare than other, such as roast beef. The common foods between all whites were cornbread, greens, pork, fried chicken, beans, rice, and cornmeal.